The situation in Italy is still critical. We're in our third week of lockdown.
France, a country behind Italy, but expecting to follow in its wake.
No shortage of hand sanitizers in Tehran.
China, the place where it all started, now in many ways feels like the safest place to be.
The Cuban government has announced that it is closing down entirely to tourism. Cuba's cutting off its hand to save its arm.
What is clear on the ground here is that Tokyo 2020, in its current form, is not going to happen.
The situation in Italy is still critical, but we had a little bit of good news overnight. The number of total cases and the number of total deaths has gone slightly down over the course of the last 24 hours from the previous 24 hours. That gives people hope that the lockdown is working. This is a crucial week across the country. Authorities say that this is the first week we should be able to start to see the effects of the lockdown. That would mean the flattening of the curve, and maybe the numbers will continue to go down. We've seen a lot fewer people out on the streets. You've got police cars going around with loudspeakers telling people to go in the house. There's a huge amount of police on the streets telling people to stay inside. And I think that the rising number of deaths especially has made people take this a lot more seriously. Only grocery stores and pharmacies are open, and I think people are finding that to be the new normal. They get their groceries, they go back home, they spend time with their families, they work from home. All of those sorts of things are becoming a lot easier now that we're in our third week of lockdown.
Here in France, we've been covering the outbreak from within a quarantine that is stricter than the confinement faced by most French people. That is because the CNN team here in Paris had just come back from Rome. We have our little live position here on a balcony. That was important to allow us to keep working. And of course, this street below, which gives an idea of just how quiet Paris is now as a result of these lockdown measures. So here in France, we reckon we're about 5 to 8 days behind what we saw in Italy, with the outbreak progressing roughly at the same rate, and many of the same problems presenting themselves to the healthcare professionals. So France, a country behind Italy, but expecting to follow in its wake. Authorities really trying to keep people at home.
I'm David Culver in Shanghai, and it's here in China numbers are starting to show a more positive trend. Needless to say, you're starting to see folks in places like Shanghai, a city of 24+ million people, slowly resuming life. So while the numbers are looking positive, they are concerned about an external threat. It's interesting if you go back just a few weeks, and it was the rest of the world that was concerned about anyone traveling from mainland China. Now it's China that's worried about anyone coming from the rest of the world. So much so that they have imposed government-mandated quarantine in major cities like Beijing and right here in Shanghai. So what does that look like? Fly in from any other country into some of those airports, Beijing or Shanghai, for example, and they will put you through a very strict evaluation process. The screening is rather intense, and then for many people, it's off to government quarantine. That's a facility that's separate from your own home or hotel, and you are there for 14 days, and they will monitor you very closely. It is a bit strange for us who have been reporting now on this in China for more than 2 months to think that the place where it all started now in many ways feels like the safest place to be, and particularly here in Shanghai.
When it comes to the coronavirus situation here in Japan, it's eerie how relaxed this country is. Restaurants and bars are open. People are crowding into public transportation. There were pictures on social media over the weekend of people packing Tokyo parks to view the cherry blossoms. The Japanese government has not imposed the kind of firm restrictions on business and travel as other countries. And they haven't declared a state of emergency, pointing to the relatively low number of coronavirus cases here. Here in Tokyo, the number one issue that people are talking about right now is not the coronavirus pandemic itself, but the Olympics. Tokyo 2020 was scheduled to begin on July 24th. And up until recently, the Japanese government and International Olympic Committee were insisting that they were moving forward with plans to host the games on schedule. But then these calls of condemnation started coming in from all over the world, from all-powerful USA Track and Field and USA Swimming. Then countries like Canada and Australia said they weren't sending athletes. And now, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, in an abrupt about-face, is acknowledging that in this current global climate, it'll be pretty much impossible to host the Olympics in July. But what is clear on the ground here is that Tokyo 2020, in its current form, is not going to happen.
Iranian families are welcoming Nowruz in sober mood. At this time of the year, they used to entertain families, friends, relatives at home, or pay visit to elders and be entertained. But now, there is no such entertainment. Shopping centers are closed, and only pharmacies, groceries, and some restaurants are open to deliver food. Shopping center in Tehran. People buy, but they try to observe hygienic standards. But social distance is not as much as should be. No shortage of hand sanitizers. Plenty of them are available to the customers. No shortage of towels and sanitizers. The shelves are replenished immediately by the staff of hypermarket in Tehran.
We're in Havana, Cuba, on the Malecon seawall, what is known as the couch of Havana, because people like to come, sit here, take in the ocean view, and on a beautiful day like this one, you could have hundreds, even thousands of people usually out here. Right now, there is nobody, and that is incredibly a good sign. That means that people are starting to listen to the Cuban government's warnings, and they're starting to realize the dramatic changes that are going to take place on this island in the coming days. Cuba was a little bit behind other countries, and now we are seeing new cases, and that is a huge concern on this island. The Cuban government has announced that it is closing down entirely to tourism. This island lives off tourism. Closing down tourism for at least 30 days is going to have a major economic impact. What some people have told me here is that essentially Cuba's cutting off its hand to save its arm. It's that dramatic.
Golf isn't known for being the most forgiving game. But there's nothing quite like shanking your ball into the drink or pond. That's where this guy comes in. Here at TPC Sawgrass, hundreds of golfers lose their balls to the infamous par 3 17th hole. But one golfer's misery is another man's gold. This is Gordon Davis.
My name is Gordon Davis, and I'm a professional golf ball diver.
And he makes a living diving for golf balls all over Florida.
I've been diving for golf balls approximately 50 years.
And there are a lot of balls to be found.
On average, when I'm diving, I'll pick up 3,000 to 4,000.
3,000 to 4,000?
3,000 to 4,000.
Whoa. So how do you find these golf balls?
It's mostly, just picking them up out of the mud, and some places the mud's so deep that you can't do nothing with it,
And it's that mud that makes it impossible to see, well, anything.
Most courses, there's very few that has clear water. Most of them has poor visibility because of the algae and all that.
So what happens next?
After I pull the balls out, they go through, pick out some of them, and they take them from there.
They being someone who wants to repurpose these balls.
These balls are authentic.
These authentic balls are diced up, placed in all sorts of usable keepsakes like cufflinks, watches, and bottle openers. And Gordon, he knows what it takes to be a professional golf ball diver.
Well, I tell people you got to be a kind of a special cat to be a golf ball diver. Somebody with grit and that wants to be an independent person. It's like with any other business, someone has to do it. Everybody has a different job, and this happens to be mine.
Seeing as you're kind of a special cat, any advice for golfers trying to keep their balls dry?
Yeah, take up another sport. Hole in one.